real estate is a people business. I call it a full contact sport with other people, right? And you got to be willing to bump with people and figure each other out and those sorts of things. And so what I find with relationships is relationships are good and they're necessary, but there just needs to be a steady exchange of value.
Welcome to the Real Freedom Show, where we inspire you to pursue your passion to gain time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. Let's get some real freedom together. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Real Freedom, Real Estate Leverage Freedom, where we talk about people building time and financial freedom through different opportunities in real estate. I think real estate is an amazing space to be, and so excited to share people's stories, say how they got here, what they're doing, what works well, and kind of the journey as it's taken them through different places of real estate, myself included. I'm not working on now what I started when I was in real estate, but that's kind of the entrepreneurial journey, which is awesome. So today we've got Frank Iglesias here, and he's going to share with us about his journey. He is the host of 2 podcasts and has done a lot in real estate. So he invests in the Southeast region, based out of Atlanta, has done flips, buy and holds, wholesaling, single family, multifamily, you name it. Excited to get into more of your journey, Frank, and your story. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
So why don't you just give us a little bit of a start, kind of why you got in real estate, how you got in real estate, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, no, back in 2008, I got the email, as I like to say, inviting me to a Rich Dad, Poor Dad seminar. You know, the 2-3 hour event, however long it was, right? And I don't know where the email came from, don't know how it on the list, but I got it, and so I went.
Heavens above, yep.
Like so many people, that's how it started, right? And so I went, and then we know the path, right? It led us to the 3-day, pay whatever, a few $100, and then that led to the buying courses. And from the time from that first seminar to our purchase our first property, I mean, it was roughly 5 or 6 months. It wasn't that long. We bought our first one in January of 2009. And I like to tell people, you know, back then, looking back, we now know what happened, right? The real estate market was crashing. And we're running around, we didn't know, I worked a full-time job in IT, and we're running around going, look, you can buy houses for 50 grand. How cool is that? Right? Like there was no click to, there was an epic disaster unfolding. And we didn't really know that or understand it until about 2 or so years later, when we got more into the wholesaling side and we actually started talking to sellers to wholesale. That's when we really started to learn, oh my gosh, like this is bad, right? And you would hear these stories, right? And you're saying, hey, we buy houses cash or whatever, and the comps say a house is worth 100, but their mortgage was 200, which was probably like every other phone call, if not more so. So it was like, oh my gosh. And back then short sales became a thing. That's something we never really got into a lot, but that was back when that was apparently a rage. And but I was still working IT until middle of 2011, which is when I left IT, because quite frankly, I was bored. Great company, great team, great benefits. Everything was great, and I was bored. So it was kind of well, if everything's great and I'm bored, this is a sign that it's time to make the pivot. So we went into it full time, and from there we're always doing a few little fits and flips, but they were small. Those projects graduated in size, and then that graduated into new construction. And when we got really heavy into new construction, and retrospect, this was not the best decision, is everything else sort of stopped, because new construction is like a ginormous vacuum that just sucks up your time in crazy ways. And that's basically what happened. We ended up building a little bit of a construction company, and then we've since toned that down because we didn't get into this to become a builder, although we became one for a few years. So I could build a house in my sleep at this point. but that was not the goal, right? Wait a second, we're real estate investors, not builders. We're not trying to be D.R. Horton or anything like that.
Hmm.
So it's been quite the journey, to say the least, but we've developed a ton of experience across a ton of types of transactions. Some ups, some downs, and right, we've seen the mountaintop and we've seen a really low valley. So it's been quite a ride for sure. But overall, it's worked out fairly well in the big picture.
I think for a lot of people that are listening, just really encouraging people to make that leap and get in. And I think for you, it was, yeah, understanding, like you mentioned, rich dad, poor dad, eventually getting over to that other quadrant, right? Where you've got the business owner and the investor quadrant versus the employee and self-employed. You see kind of where that future path can lead versus, eternally being an employee. Great, you're probably not going to get to where you really want to go. So kudos to you for making the leap. So people listening to this encourage you to get in. And I think too, your story is a great example of showing how things can change. I think people think like, oh, when I quit my job or I, start building a side hustle in real estate, like the first thing that I pick is going to be the thing that I do for the rest of my life. And that's not the case. In fact, that's very much not the case, because you're going to learn about what you like, what you don't like. The market's going to change, right? Your connections are going to change. And so you can be okay, kind of, I call it like an entrepreneurial playground. Real estate is an entrepreneurial playground. There's so much stuff that you can do in real estate, and it may twist and turn over time, but you don't have to have it all figured out to get started.
No, absolutely. And I tell people, and I do some coaching as well. It's a secondary thing I do, not a primary, but I do it. I used to run meetings for several years, which was effectively, free group coaching is what that was. I've done IT consulting. I used to teach music, so educating is something I enjoy. But I tell investors, I'm like, look, you really want to be clear on what is it you're passionate about, and find the real estate vehicle that lines up. Example is, I talked to a gentleman not long ago, and most people, they see the TV shows, people flipping these crazy numbers, when they, the shows are entertainment, right? They're great, but they only show like 1% of what really happens. And I told the guy, well, what's his passion? His passion was helping people. I said, well, if your passion is serving people and helping people, don't flip, don't flip. Because fixing and flipping is not serving people. That's all about feeding your creativity. Now, yes, a family gets the home at the end, true. But if you really want to serve people, there's other avenues in real estate where you're actually one-on-one really helping them. Flipping is a very time-consuming activity that's not at all about helping, the masses, right? It's just not, and that's okay, right? It's just a different avenue. So, I tell people, get a coach, have someone walk you through it to help you get focused, and then find the path that aligns with you.
I remember for me, a flip is what actually got me into multifamily, because I spent so much time away from my family. This was my team. We were going to try to do a team flip together, and put in, maybe it was 6 months of time, kind of nights and weekends time, and barely made any, if any, money off of it. And I was like, wait a second, the thing that's supposed to help me spend more time with my family down the road is the thing that sucked up all my time. And it's because I like doing the work. Like, I work construction in college. Like, I love tile. I shouldn't say I love tiling, but like doing the painting, putting in the flooring, like just being on the site, using my hands, like that's really fun for me. And I found it actually cost me more in the future, because I would insert myself where I should have just hired somebody to do it because I like the work, and then it slowed us down. And so I looked up then and I was like, I can't insert myself into this anymore. So then we moved to multifamily, where I couldn't physically insert myself on multiple units. And so that worked out well for me. It was kind of a healthy barrier, but it came out of a learning. And I think that's what people need to understand, is you learn and adjust as you go, as you have done over the years.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I can relate, because when you're flipping, or in our case, it was a lot of building as well, it really feeds the creative spirit. If you're the type of person that loves to create, like when I was a kid, I played with Legos, like I love creating stuff. And so it feeds that, but exactly like you said, and I found myself at similar places, like you're working insanely hard and the return was not there to justify it. And so we realize, if we want to do new construction in the future, that's fine, but it needs to be kept in its proper place. It can be a side project, maybe do one or two, But like what we were doing, we had a whole bunch of like, no, 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 no. We basically created a seriously glorified job, and that was never the goal.
Now, talk a little bit about as your interests have changed, as your kind of skills and abilities have changed, as you've kind of morphed into some of these different assets within real estate, building relationships with other people, right? That's really important. You're not swinging the hammer. You're not doing everything from soup to nuts yourself. It takes other people. Maybe talk about kind of finding those key partnerships, relationships, employee, whatever that might have looked like over time, but how you were able to kind of find and help people help you to scale in your growth.
We could talk a long time on this. So it's really two things, relationships and partnerships. It's really two different things. Like a partnership is like a glorified relationship, really, like it's a next level. With relationships, I'll speak to both. With relationships, obviously, I learned through time that real estate is a people business. I call it a full contact sport with other people, right? And you got to be willing to bump with people and figure each other out and those sorts of things. And so what I find with relationships is relationships are good and they're necessary, but there just needs to be a steady exchange of value. And the minute that exchange of value diminishes now, and let's be real, we're all human. No one's going to stay 100%, oh, we're both equal in value exchange, all that, right? Like that's not realistic. But as long as there's, some semblance of, hey, we're trying to, keep a value thing going, hey, then it's, building relationships doesn't have to be particularly difficult. It really usually comes down to how willing people are. And the other thing I've learned is some relationships do expire, which is something that was not easy for me to learn, because we have this idea that once we build a relationship, it should last forever. Why would it not? But the reality is people change. It's not necessarily a negative. People just evolve and they want to do different things. And, and so some people that we built a relationship with, we don't really talk real estate anymore, but when I talk to them, we catch up, we chat, whatever, and that's okay. But as long as there's a sincere desire to create that idea of mutual value, it's a positive, right? It's a positive. Now, but when you go to a partnership, though, it's a little bit of a different conversation. And one of the things I did was, and I gave a talk on partnerships some time back, and the thing I learned about partnerships is it sounds good to everybody at the beginning, right? People are excited, everyone's excited. What could go wrong? Well, the answer is apparently a lot. And so the biggest thing I learned about partnerships is when two people decide to partner, the first thing you got to understand is your first priority is not the deal. It's not the deal, it's not the project, it's not the endeavor, it's each other. And if that's not the priority, then that partnership won't last. Somewhere along the way, something will go wrong. And as I tell people, everyone's here at the beginning, but when something bad happens, everyone's going to fall to the level of their training on how they handle difficult times. And unfortunately, the person that's not as good at it, instead of both people focusing on the problem, the person that's not as good starts attacking the person handling it better. And I've seen it again and again. And quite frankly, we experienced it in a couple of ours. We're like, wait a minute, I'm ready to go to war with you, but you're trying to start a war with me instead of us solving the problem. And that doesn't work. And so I just learned that, first of all, a lot of partnerships don't work out. And I think that's the number one reason is the priority is just not in the right place. The priority's got to be, if you're going to partner, it's each other first. Because if you don't have each other's back, no matter what, and walk through whatever, it doesn't matter what happens with the deal, quite frankly. If it works, great. But if it doesn't and it blows up, don't be surprised.
I love hearing people's stories and how that works. Another question that I have that I think a lot of people are curious to hear about is, obviously you've had your hands in quite a few different things. How much of it is you going and hunting? So you've done, let's just say, like flipping, buy and hold, and wholesaling, kind of like three distinctly different things. Were you doing any of them at the same time? And then I'm curious from like a lead generation perspective, how much was it you actively hunting these deals or what kind of just happened to naturally come to you? Because it feels like sometimes we feel like we have to have this perfect plan and then everything changes. And so I'm curious to know kind of how much of those couple of different buckets you've been in was it you saying, I'm going to do fix and flips right now and that's all that I'm going to do, but then this other thing came up and it's like, oh, I'll deal with that because I can and it works well and it fits. Does that make sense? Like, what were you kind of
Yeah.
actively hunting versus what kind of came across your desk and you handled it because you could?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So there's two different questions there. So as far as what we were doing, one of the things that I would say did not serve me well from Rich Dad Poor Dad, and don't get me wrong, we made our money back from it, but the way Rich Dad Poor Dad was set up, and quite frankly, a lot of real estate training is set up this way, um, is this idea of go take courses in different exit strategies. The problem with that is now you're learning about different exit strategies, and it distracts from the focus of getting one really good. So in our early days, we learned about fix and flip. We learned about buy and hold. And then we learned about wholesale. So we've never really had a period where we were uber focused. That's all we did. Like it's never happened. And I don't think that I don't see that as a positive. I think it's just the reality of our journey. But I would argue I think you will be much more effective picking one strategy. This is what you do, master it, then you can have your team, then you can add. To me, that is people that I know that have done that have been able to generate success faster
Mm-hmm.
because there's the power of focus. The problem is a lot of real estate training doesn't come across that way. Now some does, like it's not none of it's 100%, right? But if you're gonna wholesale, wholesale. You
Mm-hmm.
want to flip, great, go all in on flipping. So it's the idea of going deep rather than spreading wide. So I don't subscribe this that much. I used to, but now looking back, I'm like, no, don't go out and try to learn 5 exit strategies just because it'll give you more ways to exit a deal. No, go deeper and get good at that one thing. Isn't it Gary Keller's got the book, The One Thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and I agree with that. The problem is I didn't get that knowledge until we were years into it. And unfortunately, real estate, like most business, really, not just real estate, what you don't know can and will hurt you. Right? That's a simple reality. And so, we had to learn that lesson the hard way. With regards to lead generation, though, so once you focus on whatever it is you're going to do, whatever the strategy is, for us, lead generation, we used to do all the marketing things, but what we found is some of our favorite types of lead generation is just networking.
Mm-hmm.
Just talk to people and keep talking to people, and deals just come your way after a while, especially after you've done it a few years, right? Because now people know you, they've heard of you, and so or they saw you online, whatever, and people realize, hey, this person's real, and now all of a sudden, real deals are happening. People are sending you quality leads. So I'm a big fan of that. Now, could you do any of the lead generation strategies today? You could. And people always ask the question, well, which lead generation strategy is the best, right? We've asked it too. But in reality, they all work if you work them, right? I've never seen a lead generation strategy that just flat out doesn't work, or at least some period of time. And people would even say, well, short sales are dead. No, there's still short sales. They're just not, they're just not everywhere like they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But every strategy will work if you work it. The question is, how much work are you willing to put in to work it? And it's usually a lot more than you're going into it thinking, right?
Yeah.
We've kind of been conditioned to think, do this in 30, you always see these challenges, wholesale your first deal in 30 days, I guarantee this, right? But it doesn't work that way for everybody. In fact, it doesn't work that way for most people. It
Mm-hmm.
could work, and some people, and then the worst part, some people do it and it works and it works amazing the first time. And now your brain starts thinking, well, it's going to be that way every time. I remember doing a partnership with a friend once, sold a property, we built a house, sold it, I think it made like 100 grand, and we split it. And I remember saying then, Don't get used to this. It doesn't always go this way.
Hmm.
Well, guess what happened? Did they listen? No, right? Because now they have this expectation. Well, the second one gets done.
Everyone's going to make that much.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So now the second one didn't make 100 grand. The third one didn't make 100 grand. I wasn't shocked, but the reality is, people think they get that first taste of success, and now you just think and that's not reality. There's ups, there's downs. You might lose on some of them, right? It happens.
Hmm. I always use the example back when I was on a residential real estate team. We had an agent that always had this idea of sending out recipe cards, right? Like in residential real estate, right? You're sending mailings to your sphere and all that. And because somebody she knew at one point in time got a listing because they sent out a recipe card, and we're always like, just because one deal came at one time from a recipe card doesn't mean my entire marketing strategy is now I'm going to send out a dessert topping of the or a dessert idea of the quarter, and also now I'm going to get all these listings. So you have to balance, right? Just because something worked one time doesn't mean it's going to work all the time. And so yeah, I totally get it. Are you looking to get started or scale in real estate investing but don't know your next step? Are you overwhelmed thinking about finding deals, analyzing deals, doing due diligence, and managing properties on top of it? Go ahead and push the easy button and invest with us. Real estate investing is what we do full time. We've done dozens of deals with hundreds of doors. We have the knowledge and experience to handpick the best deals that most investors can't find. We vet large off-market deals all the time where you can hopefully find returns and economies of scale that you just can't find on your own. The best thing is it's 100% passive to you for less capital than you put down trying to acquire a property on your own. Don't let this year go by where you don't make the leap, add to your portfolio, or you just sit in analysis by paralysis. To find out more, visit freedomthroughrealestate.com and click on invest. You can book a call and learn more there. So get to scaling your portfolio now with us by your side. Another question that I know a lot of folks have is when it comes to kind of picking markets or picking areas. You're based out of Atlanta, you work in the Southeast. Kind of talk about how you came across other areas as you went, kind of that same idea. Was it a focus of, hey, we're going to target this area of this state? Or is it, hey, I built some great networks and people are sending deals my way and now the numbers work out in this area? But how are you kind of deciding where you're choosing to work?
No, it's a great question. It really depends on the type of deal we're trying to do. So, for example, if I was going to do new construction, I'm going to keep that pretty close to home, right? Because knowing what I know, I need to keep that close to home. And if I don't keep it close to home, then I got to have a very trusted set of people, right? That's going to really be involved with that. And quite frankly, the same is for fix and flip. We've done remote fix and flip. I mean, can it work? Of course it can work, but you better have a really good system because it can be quite intensive. Whereas something like rentals, for example, it's about where can I go where the deal makes sense and the cash flow is going to be good, but also one of the things is you might go to a market where the cash flow is good, but the maintenance of tenants might be higher than you're willing to put in. So you can't just look at the deal. You have to look at, well, what's the clientele? Who are my tenants? Is it a landlord-friendly state? Well, maybe it's a landlord-friendly state, but it's not a landlord-friendly municipality, right? So the state might be landlord-friendly, but this particular town, oh, no, Judge, Mr., Mrs., whoever, right? Like, so you gotta, and then what, are the clients, or I'm sorry, the tenants, are they gonna be good renter clients? Like, are they gonna be, what is the history of people in that area? How many evictions is going on? So we've just learned with buy and hold, there's more factors than just the property. Fix and flip is like, well, what are the comps? Then it's, well, what's the days on market? Oh, the numbers are great, but every property takes 6 months to sell. That's not too exciting, right? So we've just learned that there's a number of criteria we want to look at depending on what the exit is going to be. So there's not really a one size fits all because every market is different. And today, and one of my wholesaling friends, he's always saying this now, says Trump is the wild card. Which is true, right? It's true. Love him or hate him, we're not going to get into that, but he's right? Like when he speaks, the world is shifting, right? The wind is definitely blowing depending on what he says on any day. You've got this whole tariff thing, right? So if you're in construction, that could impact you. Now, to what degree? Well, it depends. If you're in a super hot market, the impact may be minimal. Maybe your cost goes up because your project is not big. But if I'm doing a big project and the market's not as fast, that impact could be much larger because of what's happening at a national level. So, that's just a high level example of how things outside of real estate could impact what we're doing. So we have to look at that as well. And we've been looking at that for a while because when interest rates started going up, I learned this from a gentleman that had a privilege to meet. He was a billionaire, and I went to a mastermind at his house once, and he said something that was fascinating. He said the Fed is incredibly transparent. If you go to the Fed's website, they tell you exactly what they're going to do. And so, interestingly enough, when interest rates were going up, the Fed went in there and actually publicly said they were trying to cool off, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but they're trying to cool down the real estate market. Right? They said it. Like, it wasn't like a shock, like, oh my God, what's going to happen? No, they just told you what's going to happen. It's right there, public disclosure. And obviously that impacted what we were doing. That was a clue. Okay, this is not the time to be building. Finish what you got and get out for a little while, because this is going to be messy for a while. And now fast forward 2025, interest rates are still not down. So all that to say, a lot of factors going into picking a market, exit strategy, and it's not as simple as just numbers and deal, which is what a lot of training pitches. And I'm not picking on training, but experience teaches it's more than that.
And going back to what you talked about with relationships and partnerships, when you're working in other states, you got to have people that you trust that are either doing the work or managing those assets too, because you can't just drive down the street and check out your buy and hold property if it's, 5 hours, 10 hours away. And so it's important to have great relationships and great people to help manage those assets, because once you purchase a property, if you're holding it, that asset management is everything, right? They're responsible for the future value when you go and when that time is right to sell.
No, absolutely. I think what I learned is back in the early days, you sort of get this idea in your head of you learn a strategy, you learn a technique, whatever, and you just sort of think that that's just how it's always going to be. And real estate, while it doesn't shift as fast as the stock market, it absolutely shifts. And you got to assess risk. You got to really determine how much risk are you really willing to take on. And an example of that is, when we learn to wholesale, it's, hey, 70% of ARV minus repairs minus assignment fee, that's my offer. That's great. If you're going to wholesale, sure, go for it. But if you're going to be the one taking on the risk, that formula is nonsense. And some people are like, did you say that? Yes, I did. I think I think the whole thing is nonsense when you're actually the one doing the construction, taking on the risk. And the reality is, you could even have the same house, two different people, same budget, same numbers. The numbers will still be different just because on the human being's ability to assess how much risk they want to take on. There's a lot of subjectivity in that conversation. So we just learn, hey, risk is a huge part of it. Or I like to say it this way, there's two sides of the table. There's the sales side of the table and the risk side of the table. And if you're on the risk side, don't assume the people on the sales side are going to tell you everything you really need to know out of the kindness of their heart. Doesn't mean they're bad people. They're just fulfilling a totally different role than you are.
Well, Frank, I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and pouring into us here with all the wisdom you've gained. For people that want to reach out to you and learn more, how can they do that?
Yeah, if someone wants to reach out to me, the easiest way is find me on Facebook. I'm on all the social medias, but I'm on Facebook the most often. So you can message me there. Otherwise, you could Google my name, go to my website, frankiglesias.com. You can send us a note through there, or you could even just call our office, 678-408-2228, or text the number if you want, that's fine. So I'm pretty easy to find. Facebook is generally going to be the fastest.
Well, thank you so much, Frank, for coming on and sharing, and best of luck to you in the future.